I always say this, a dog has this life it's living. And if we can't cherish that and make the most of it for that life, I get sentimental when I talk about this. We're doing such a horrible disservice to the animal because it's doing its best, right? We just have to kind of get out of the way.
Good morning, YouTube. My name is Will.
Lotus.
Enzo. Today's video is going to be a first for the channel. We're going to be doing an interview that I held with Robert Cabral. For those of you not familiar with Robert, he is a dog trainer. He is an author, he is a competitor, and he is the founder of Bounds Angels University, a program that helps train shelter dogs in the hopes of helping them get adopted. Now, as I mentioned, he is who we have partnered with to offer training for our channel. I know I get a lot of those questions, so I wanted to have him on to go over some basic questions and to let you guys get to know him if you don't know him already. This is my first type of video like this, so bear with me. I am gonna put a table of contents on the screen probably, but if not, it'll definitely be below. If you want to reference it, come back to anything, jump around or anything like that. So without further ado, to the interview. Come on, boys, it's wet and muddy. All right, so Robert, it's good to finally meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What we're doing today, for those of you who have never watched the channel or maybe don't know this, but we've partnered with Robert to offer some online training for you guys. I get a ton of training questions, and as I tell people all the time, I am not a trainer. And while I'm willing to go over basics, I don't like to go into the more advanced stuff because frankly, I don't think people should. It's not that people shouldn't teach themselves. It's that it's more complicated, I think, than people realize. I wanted to have Robert on the channel to kind of just go over some basics and get his thoughts on some things.
Great to be here.
Why don't we just start with a little bit about yourself for those of you who don't know you?
Well, I started training dogs I started learning about dog training about 15, 20 years ago and really started formally training about 12 years ago. And my primary background at that point was with dogs in shelters, severe behavioral problems. I always tell people that training a dog is really a method of communication. It's a cross-species communication. And as good as you are in communicating with one species, you can kind of transfer that to another. So for years, I spent a lot of time training children and adults in martial arts and hand-to-hand combat and stuff like that. So teaching and explaining things is one thing. Being tactile with your physical self is another thing. And dog training really takes both of those into consideration. And when I went into dog training, I'd learned some basics from friends of mine who were training their dogs, particularly one who had a Doberman who I helped him train, and really went from there and started working in the shelters. I was doing photography at the time. I was watching the behavior of the dogs when I was photographing them and videotaping them. And things I learned came more and more and more into play. And from there, it just kind of dominoed. I started getting requests from people to train their dogs. I had trained my own personal dog and people saw it. They wanted more information. It was definitely a career I never wanted to get into because it was a hobby of mine. And it's been the case with me with every hobby I've had. It's turned into a career and I end up hating that hobby. That hasn't happened yet with dog training. I still love doing it because I think it involves less dealing with people and more dealing with dogs, which I enjoy a lot.
Obviously, you didn't plan to be a dog trainer. That's, I didn't actually know that. Obviously, I've been through your training program online. I knew you had done the martial arts prior, but I didn't realize it was just like you kind of fell into it. So that's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
I also like dealing with dogs more.
It's much better than dealing with people. I mean, the only thing that really makes me dislike dog training is the people, the owners, because inevitably it becomes an ego game where people expect more of their dogs than the dogs are capable of. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we always face. Some people have dogs who they can't do what they see Goofy or Maya doing or Dwayne doing. And then people try to push their dogs to that level. And, the one saying I always revert back to is you got the dog you got. You got to love that dog. Goofy's not as good as some other dogs, some world champion dogs, but I don't expect that of them. So people really get in the way of their dog's behavior and their training and the dog's abilities.
I mean, that's, I think, amazing advice to give. I know that's something that we've had to adjust to ourselves with Lotus. We thought we were going to have a second Enzo where we could just take anywhere and do anything. And we've come to the realization that he's probably not going to be like Enzo,
but that's okay. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with him. We just got to find ways to, encourage what things he is good at. So yeah, I love that answer.
You just got to I always say this, a dog has this life it's living. And if we can't cherish that and make the most of it for that life, I get sentimental when I talk about this. We're doing such a horrible disservice to the animal because it's doing its best, right? We just have to kind of get out of the way and embrace that bestness. Like I'll give you an example. Maya is a great dog, super well bred. She's been bred twice. I got it from a client after he bred her, and she's not bright, right? She's a German Shepherd, but he leaks a lot. Leaks as far as talking about, whines a lot. She's okay. She's smarter than most of the dogs that I know, but she's not like to the level of Goofy. And in the beginning, I realized that that's going to be the dog I got. She's great at something. She's not great at other things, but expecting more of her or being upset because she can't do those other things is like just, it's like being upset with your child because they're short or they're skinny or something like that. It's horrible. I hate when people do that to their dogs.
One of the things I offered to do for those watching or listening was to send Alan's the moderator, but to send Robert the questions ahead of time. And Alan had told me that no, he'd rather just go live. And you know what? I could not have come up with a question that would have gotten me that answer. I think that further strengthens why I feel comfortable promoting your service. And, we don't promote much stuff yet on our channel, and I don't plan to promote a whole lot. One of the things we deal with a lot is when people contact us, am I going to have to give this dog up because they can't do this or they can't do that? And it's so frustrating because, quite frankly, I just want to pick them up and shake them and tell them like, no, your dog is fine. So yeah, it's good to hear stuff like that from trainers.
Oh, yeah, it's important. I mean, you got to get the truth out. And that's, I don't like the whole thing of people always say, oh, I'll send you the questions I'm going to ask you. I came from a different school. So in martial arts, nobody says I'm going to punch you with my right hand. We get on the mat and we kind of figure it out. And a lot of trainers, and I'm not criticizing trainers. It's one thing, the old saying says the only thing two dog trainers can agree on is if the third dog trainer is wrong. I disagree with that. I think there's a lot of really good trainers out there. Humility is at the forefront of dog training because you don't know what you're getting. And when you train somebody's pet dog, you have an advantage, right? I call the client says, oh, my dog is doing this. If you put your hand over his head, he's going to nip at you. Well, then I know not to put my hand over the dog's head. But when I'm working with a dog in a shelter, a dog who really needs me, a dog who really is not understood, I don't have that information up front. So life is about taking challenges and conquering those challenges as they approach you, not being ready for them in a planned way, but being ready for them in an unplanned way and dealing with that. That's life. That's reality. That's the way you got to live. And that's why I said, you could have sent the questions. It doesn't make any difference because I rarely read them. People send me questions and I just don't look at them. I'm just going to talk to you and we're going to have a conversation. That's just the best way to have a real conversation.
I'm glad that was the answer. This was my idea to do this video. So the goal was to make it as easy as possible, but obviously this is way better this way. We get countless questions on our channel from people from various things, and we could cover a million different training topics. I'm not going to have you try to teach anything or anything crazy like that right now. If people want to learn, they can obviously go to your channel or go to your program. I'd say one of the biggest questions we get is, if I've never had a dog before, is a shepherd going to be okay? Can I handle it? Be curious to get your thoughts.
I remember back in the day when I was doing more rescue work, I used to say, well, is this person the right person for that dog? And 99% of the time it's no, right? It's like, are you ready to be a parent? By the way, I'm not a parent, I'm a step parent, but are you ready to be a parent? You don't know till you get a baby, right? So, are you a responsible person? Are you a good human being? Are you a little bit selfless? Can you put some time aside? When I got my first dog as an adult, it was a Shar-Pei. And I asked my friend Mike, the guy who started me on training and gave me some tidbits to get my whistle wet on it. I said, wow, I'm going to get this dog. Like, what am I going to do if I want to go out on a date? I was single at the time. Or if I want to do whatever, what do I do? Can I leave this dog alone at night? And he said, oh, yeah, you could just leave some food out, have a doggy door. You can leave him alone for a day or so. It's not a big deal. And I thought, oh, okay, that's not that big of a commitment. And I probably wouldn't have said to a person like myself at that point that I would be the best dog owner. I mean, I was very responsible and stuff like that. I hadn't come from a background of work that I did that required me to be very responsible. But the passion of loving that animal, of really caring and being able to step much further outside of myself than I could have seen myself doing, made me a good owner. And I think if a person has an ounce of compassion, that they can do that. They can kind of educate themselves. How do I train this dog? What's the best food for this dog? What's the best socialization? What are the best activities for that dog? The dog should help you grow, right? In other words, you're not going to be, no matter how responsible you are or how ready you are, you're not going to be ready for that commitment if you haven't had a dog. But if you're, a moron and you're selfish, then yeah, you shouldn't get a dog at all. You shouldn't even get a fish. But if you kind of understand that this is going to be a change, it's going to be something that's going to uproot your life a little bit and make it so much better, then get a dog. And shepherds are great dogs. I mean, there's a lot of great dogs, but high drive working shepherds are not great dogs for people who are going to, who really haven't had the experience, because there's a lot more issues, there's a lot more drive, and there's a lot more behavioral issues to deal with. But yeah, I mean, in short, you hope the person develops into the dog owner that they should be, as opposed to being that dog owner when they get the dog.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, they're high drive. We'll just leave it at that with Lotus. Let's talk about one of the more controversial things we get slack on, and that is our e-collars. Now, I don't ever talk about them. It's not because I care that people know we use them. It's just there's a lot of misconceptions out there about them. I know you aren't opposed to them as a training tool, so I'd kind of just have you touch on that a little bit, I guess, to maybe for the future, for the hundreds of thousands of e-collar questions I can get, I can just say, look, go here, hear his answer.
Well, the first thing that people do is they call them shock collars, and they get into it. I think the way people approach the question says a lot about the person. So in other words, if a person says, well, why would you shock your dog? Says to me that you're a person who that's the first thing you think about, right? The first thing you think is, because I have a tool that is capable of doing something cruel, that I'm going to use it to do something cruel. The tool is also able to do some amazing things. In other words, if I give you a hammer, you can put holes in the wall or you can build a house. The cruelest tool we really have in dog training is our minds and our hands. And if you think of what people do with their minds and their hands by abusing dogs, neglecting dogs, beating dogs, and all that, it has nothing to do with an e-collar, right? It's a tool. It's something. I mean, if I say, well, why are you driving a car? Just because, why do you want to drive over people? Why do you want to hit people on the road? Well, maybe you just want to get to work. And and people say that's a stupid comparison, but it's actually not. It's actually a very, very literal comparison, because how you use it, I can communicate with my dog across a field with the tiniest bit of stimulation. I don't have to yell at the dog. I don't have to run up to the dog. I don't have to yank on the dog's collar. And the amount of pressure I can put on a dog, and all dogs, all animals need pressure and release. They need positive and they need negative. They need reward and they need consequence. There's no other communication that we have, right? Whether that's a verbal pressure or a physical pressure, I can apply that pressure at a great distance at a very minute percentage of what I would have to do on a flat buckle collar. Requires the most pressure on a dog's neck to communicate. Then we go down to a choke chain or just a chain collar. Then we go down to a prong collar. Then we go down to an e-collar. So if you're using an e-collar properly, you're giving your dog the ability to receive communication from you at the slightest amount of pressure and discomfort to that dog possible at all.
That's the way I use it all the time, because nothing scares anybody more than what appears to be a loose dog running than if the owner is yelling that dog's name. Where I know with me and Enzo and Lotus, I can just hit the vibrate It's not even the stimulant. I can just hit the vibrate and they're like, hey, what's up? And then, they look my way. And then I can calmly say something to them. It definitely makes a huge difference. I know for us, as just a safety tool, really.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you ever saw all the pictures online years ago. They were going around where these people were taking rubber bands and putting them around the dog's muzzle to keep them from barking. So does that mean we shouldn't have rubber bands in our house?
I heard about it, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrible if you saw it. I mean, it just crushed their muzzles. It deformed their face. So it's not the tool. Look at a scalpel. I mean, you can use a scalpel to really scar up somebody, or I can use a scalpel to save somebody's life. We need to get away from that the loudest person wins, and the loudest person is usually going to be the person with the least amount of information, because they need to really force their point of view on somebody. Just so you know, I mean, Petco has recently done a thing. I'm about to do a podcast on the topic where they're banning the sale of e-collars, as they call them, shock collars, and they're calling it Stop the Shock. And I think it's really angering to me as a professional that an organization they're not a human welfare organization or an animal welfare organization. I'm an animal welfare organization. Bound Angels has saved thousands of dogs in shelters. And if we need to save those dogs or help those dogs or retrain the dogs to prevent them from going to shelters, and we need to use an e-collar to do that, that tool should be available. Now, I don't have a problem with them not wanting to sell them. That's their decision. But when you start using your platform to spew false information, I've got a problem with that. So,
yeah, I know like Europe's huge on anti-e-collars. Mm-hmm. So now I have a list of frequently asked questions that we get. I kind of keep track of them. I wanted to pick maybe one or two and just kind of get the professionals' thought on them. And, I've been debating which ones I want to go with, but I think we're going to start with the simplest one. And that is just puppy biting. We get this all the time, and I know what our answer is, but I would be curious to see what you think and what your practices are.
Well, as soon as somebody says their puppy's biting, I say, well, babies punch, and the way babies communicate is they grab your face and they grab your skin, and they have nails, and they grab you and they squeeze and twist and pull and scrape your skin. So if the right answer to that is smacking the kid in the face and punching them and doing something aversive to them, then you're in the same boat as the people who are trying to kick their dogs and be abrupt with their dogs, who are mouthing them. And that's exactly what the dog is doing. He's mouthing. Since dogs don't have an opposable thumb, they can't grab you, right? They can only grab you with their mouth, and they're communicating with you. They're trying to engage you. They're trying to be affectionate to you. They're trying to play with you. And if you ever watch two puppies playing, all they ever do is grab each other by the side of the face and drag each other around. And when you see a big dog being affectionate, he's going to do that with another dog. My two dogs do it. I'm sure your dogs do it all the time. That is the way that animal, with the same analogy of a lion or a tiger, that's the way these animals communicate. So they're learning how to communicate with you by how you interact with them. So puppies, I always say, puppies don't bite, puppies mouth. And that communication of them mouthing you, your arm, your sleeve, whatever, is just the way they're trying to engage with you. How you respond to that is going to determine how your relationship develops from there. The worst thing people do is yell at the dog or try to pull away. If the dog has a hold of your pant leg and you try to pull it away, well, all you're telling the dog there is, yeah, it's on. Let's do this. Let's have fun. Because that is the receptor in the dog's brain. I pull, you pull. It's an engagement. It's a game of tug at that point. So for most pet dogs, it's something you don't really want to harness. You don't want to engage. But if you had a dog that was going to be a protection dog or a high drive working line dog, you would want that. You would want to encourage that more and more and more by doing just that, by tugging on it and by working the behavior further and further. But, I wish people could understand that puppies don't bite and kids don't punch.
Some kids in my school did, but I don't expect you to know Enzo and Lotus's entire backstory. Our relationship is relatively new, but Lotus has a lot of fear-based reactivity. So we have confirmed it's not aggression. It is based on fear, and he attributes a lot of fear. People see Lotus and they ask questions. Plus, frankly, it's my YouTube channel. It's my interview. I might as well ask a question that's going to directly affect one of my pups. And that is, any advice to deal with the reactivity? I know what we're doing. We're doing a lot. But obviously I would love to hear what your thoughts are.
Are you talking about reactivity to people or dogs?
Mostly other dogs. He will react to people in some scenarios, but it's generally dogs.
And does he do it more when? And this is Lotus now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the smaller one.
Does he do it more when Enzo's around, or the exact same?
It doesn't matter. He will not do it if myself or my wife isn't present, though. So we've had
present.
Not. Yeah, if we're not present, he's silent. His reaction is actually to just flight. He tries to go away from it, the opposite direction of whatever he's afraid of.
So part of it could be a protective side towards you guys as well, right? A lot of behavioral stuff, especially fear-based things, stem from early socialization issues. I don't know the story of how long you've had them or anything like that, but depending on how the dog was socialized and what the dog's experiences were early on, that's one of the biggest contributing factors. And the second biggest contributing factor, the only other real contributing factor, are the dog's genetics, right? If the dog is a weaker, or what we call a sharper dog, is more responsive to things on initial experience, that's usually what will give that dog that kind of behavior. And then how you engage the dog from within that issue is how the scenario plays out. So if the dog is on a tight leash, always going to make it worse, because it eliminates the dog's ability to flight, and they only stay in the fight, right? The dog has two drives, fight or flight. And if the leash is tight on the dog's neck or on the dog's collar, the dog doesn't understand how to get away, and he's fighting for his life. So he's in that mode. He's triggered onto something, and suddenly he feels like, I'm stuck here. I got to fight this one out. If you'll see in some of my videos that I've done, some of the Join the Lesson videos where I talk about reactivity to dogs, I always show having a loose leash, popping the dog back, and rewarding the dog. But before any of that happens, the number one thing you want the dog to do is build confidence in the dog. And the way we build confidence in a dog is we give him a job to do, right? The mistake people make in reactivity or an aggression is they always try to pull the dog out of that behavior by saying, no, stop, don't do that. And that's always telling the dog what not to do. Like if I say, don't think of a pink elephant, first thing you think of is a pink elephant. So the harder the dog hears, don't do that, no. The way I analyze it is the dog feels like, no, there's trouble. We got to do something. Oh my God. Oh no. As opposed to, hey, sit. And then if the dog doesn't sit, I can correct that behavior for saying, no, I said sit. And it gives the dog a job to do when he gets to that behavior state, as opposed to a job not to do. Does that make sense?
No, it does. I know for us, we're pretty much at a point we know when he's going to react. I know his bubble, and it's gotten smaller over time, which is good. His bubble used to be, if I could see the dog, I'm going to react. Now it's, depending on his mood, we've even gotten as close as like 10, 15 yards on other dogs, and he'll not react. I mean, I can tell he tenses, but he won't react. I know for us, we usually will focus on keeping him in a heel. My wife will actually have him sit because it's easier for her to have him sit. I will generally try to heel him in a direction that is somewhere else.
Opposite, yeah. But just so you know, if a dog gets stressed, the number one thing to remember, this is with people or almost any animals, is movement relieves stress, right? So the idea of having the dog sit or down or whatever, it can kind of increase the stress. In other words, if you think of a soda bottle, if you shake it, the more you shake it, that there's stress in that bottle. It's the gas about to explode in that bottle. If the dog is sitting still, it's just, boom, it's going to go. Whereas if you can get the dog moving back and forth, engaging to you, sitting, let's go, stop, turning around, and all those things, it kind of gets the dog thinking about something else. And he's one, relieving the stress through his movement. And second of all, most importantly, he's kind of focused on something he should be doing, which would be obviously paying attention to you.
Wasn't exactly, which I didn't expect. It wasn't anything I hadn't necessarily heard, but I like the way you phrased it. It kind of makes me think about it a little bit differently. makes me think that because he'll react sometimes in the car, and it's like I need to find a way to create a distraction in the car. So that's kind of got my mind going now. What am I going to do for that?
It could be territorial too, right? I mean, Maya is, if she's in the car, she comes unglued. If somebody goes near the car, she comes unglued. So what I do is I use a bark collar in the car. Right? If Maya's in the car, she's going to have a bark collar on. And if I put her in a car without a bark collar, I'm using an electronic bark collar, she just works herself up, because she wants to get out. The minute Maya is out of a car, she wants to get into a car. And the minute she's in a car, she wants to go do something. So if somebody comes near the car, that's an interference for her. So if I put an electronic bark collar on her, I mean, I think she's zapped herself twice in her life where she barked and got the correction. But Maya will completely settle down in the car and lay down and just basically go to sleep if that collar's on. I don't even turn it on anymore. I don't need to charge it anymore. It's almost like a pacifier to her that she literally believes that. And again, there's a great example of a tool that gave her a couple corrections, but through those corrections gave her the ability to just chill out and balance out. Now, I don't use bark collars for corrections if the dog is going to be reactive to another dog or you're walking the dog outside, because it can be a negative experience for the dog, and it can set negative precedents if it's not working properly or not timed properly. But in a car, I can't think of a better use of an electronic bark collar, as long as the dog is taught properly that bark collar is turned off by them stopping the barking. And that's a no-brainer.
That's something I hadn't thought about, honestly. We're strongly against bark collars personally, because we don't ever want to take their voice away. But I had thought about it in a few scenarios with a neighbor dog, but I was like, there was no way for me to control if another, it was one thing to get him to stop barking at the neighbor dog, but I didn't want like a delivery truck to pull up and then him feel like he couldn't bark at that. So I abandoned the idea, but I didn't think about it in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, you're not teaching the dog's interesting. You're just teaching them about, in protection sports, most people who have dogs, when they're in the car before they're going into work, they put a bark collar on because they want the dog to bark a lot during the protection aspect of it, but they don't want them to spend all that energy before they get on the field. So it's just teaching the dog when to bark and when not to bark. It's not a cruel tool. I mean, again, abused, a leash and a rubber band is a horrible tool. The worst thing we ever do to a dog is we put a leash and a collar on the dog. We take away every bit of that dog's freedom. So whenever somebody purely positive says, oh, you're doing something cruel to the dog, I tell them the cruelest thing you'll ever do to a dog is to take away the dog's freedom and put a leash on him. Why don't you let them just run and be free? Why don't you do that? You just it's a downward spiral conversation with me, because giving a dog structure, giving an animal structure gives it immense freedom. And that's really why I believe in training dogs.
Yeah. That's something we always preach, yes, they have e-collars on, but people always ask, well, how do you get them to come back to you? It's like, well, they have no reason not to come back to us, because I let them go out and run around all the time. It's not anything special.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they got freedom for a moment to do whatever, they just want to go wherever I'm going. So if I say, let's go in, they come in.
Yeah, 100%.
I think this could potentially be something we do more of in the future, but as a kind of a wrap up here, I just wanted to kind of open it up to you. Is there anything to the audience that you want to say as far as something you wish all dog owners or potential dog owners would know, or just any message that you want to spread, or really anything?
I just wish all dog owners, what we started our conversation with, I just wish everybody would accept the dog that they have, understand that their dog is doing the best they can, training that dog, giving that dog a set of skills, taking your time, giving the dog a fair chance, but understanding that each dog is an individual, and just like when you think to yourself, when my life is over, that's it. There's nothing. Obviously religious, we believe that there's a heaven or whatever, but that's all there is. So your dog is committed to you for their life. They're not going anywhere, and giving them the structure of training, the quality of good food, and the gift of great companionship is the greatest gift you're going to give that dog. And you owe it to your dog. You owe it to your dog to know that your dog is doing the best it can for you, and you're doing your best for that dog, because that dog could probably get a lot better owner than you. You're probably not the best owner. I'm not talking to you, but I'm saying the person in general.
Oh,
So
no,
if you,
trust me.
well,
I could always do better.
and we all can, right? So, people always think, oh, I wish I had a smarter dog. I wish I had this. I wish I had that. Well, that's the same idiots who say, I wish I had a richer husband, or I wish I had, a younger wife, or I wish I had a faster dog. Or I wish I had a nicer car. It's always this wishing, 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 but you're never content with what you have. So the dogs that Janet and I have, we are so madly in love with our dogs. We have an 18-year-old dachshund who's our whole world. And every one of these dogs is a gift from God to me. So I love them. I cherish them. I wouldn't trade them for all the money in the world. I would be homeless living in my car with my dogs. I just wish that every person who has a dog could give them that relationship, that just cherish them, just be happy with them, give them what you can, give them the training you can, and appreciate every day you have with them, because one day is going to be that last day. And then you're going to really resent it and regret it and be really, really sad.
Yeah, try not to think about those days.
Yeah, don't.
When you guys first reached out to us to partner with your training program, I went through and watched, at least at the time, most, if not all, of the videos that you had posted, because any trainer or any person I had found prior, there was always some mixed beliefs and things I didn't agree with and stuff. With yours, I've been fortunate to where, not to say you have to agree with everything that everybody says or anything like that. You can definitely get some positive from even people you don't agree with. I have no issues promoting your program and your channel and your training. And this interview has just really kind of confirmed a lot of that. So one, I wish we would have done it sooner. Two, I would like to do it again in the future, but where can people find you, find more about you or your programs? Where can they get in contact with you? Whatever information you'd like to share.
Well, the best thing really is YouTube, because, and I designed the idea of training people. I mean, I made a very good living training dogs. I live in a very affluent area, so people could spend a lot of money training their dogs with me. It was always my goal in everything I've done. When I worked as a bodyguard, I decided to open a karate school to help underprivileged kids. So I made a lot of money training dogs. And I said, I got to be able to give something back to people who can't afford these rates that I was charging. And I decided to start a YouTube channel. And it was only for that reason. I had no idea about influencers. I had no idea about affiliate programs, about, monetizing it or anything. I just wanted people to have every bit of information that somebody who could hire me personally could have. And that's why I built the YouTube channel. It's free. The videos on there are short. They're to the point. They will give you the information. If you want to take it to a further level, then great. Then consider joining the website, joining the membership section at robertcabral.com. But no matter what, take the time and look at the simple things you can teach your dog, the simple way to communicate with your dog. And it's free. It's the best thing you'll do for your dog. Besides a healthy diet, a healthy training regimen, and a good relationship is the best thing you'll do. And it's free. It's on YouTube. You'll have all the information you need. You'll have a great relationship with your dog. And then if you decide you want to take it further, then great. Then consider joining. But don't fall for the positive only lie. There's a lot of trainers who are going to tell you how bad corrections are for dogs, and they're going to tell you how it's completely unnecessary and it should only be positive. And then they're going to lie to you and tell you it's science-based. And it's not science-based. It's a complete and utter lie. None of these trainers will ever show you a dog that has any reactive properties that is cured with a clicker and a treat. I like clickers. I like treats. I do 90% of my training in a mainly positive way. But to communicate, to learn, you have to learn that 2 times 2 is 4 and not 16. And a dog has to learn that certain behaviors are not acceptable. Give your dog clear communication and a fair way to learn the skills that'll keep them alive and keep them in your home forever and keep them safe. And you'll do a great service to your dog and to yourself, because your relationship's going to be a lot better.
I do always find it ironic that a lot of the positive only trainers will leash pull. I don't know about you, but if I had a rope around my neck and somebody yanked on it, I wouldn't consider that positive reinforcement. But, well, I think that will pretty much cover it for this time. I mean, it's been great having you on the channel. And like I said, hopefully we can do it again. The links for your channel, your program, everything will be below, so people can check that out.
Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure, and love watching you and Enzo and Lotus, and keep spreading the word. Keep inspiring people.
Unlike your videos, our videos never get to the point and take forever. So,
Well, thanks a lot for having me on. I hope to do it again soon.
no problem. Thank you.
Okay, well, I know this interview was long, but I hope you guys got a lot of usefulness out of it, a lot of enjoyment out of it. If it's something that you guys did like, let me know. It is something I could do in the future, possibly have Robert on regularly, maybe go over some questions that you guys have and filter to him. As I mentioned before, I will have links for his training, his website, his YouTube, all that below. You can check him out if you don't already know. Otherwise, appreciate you guys as always, and we'll see you on the next video. Boys, it's still raining.